NHL insiders reveal there are huge moves coming for the Edmonton Oilers. With the Oilers still looking for that cup in the McDavid era, moves need to be made to make sure they are in the best position to win it this year. And at the deadline, Johnston and Pierre LeBrun believe there are going to be some big trades made, so you're not going to want to miss this episode of Hat Trick HQ. But before we get into it, we got to say that 91% of you guys watching these videos aren't subscribed to the channel. So if you're not subscribed already, make sure to go down below and hit that subscribe button. We're on the road for 9,000 subscribers here on the channel, so appreciate it. If you're not subscribed already, want to stay up to date on the latest NHL news, make sure to hit that subscribe button. But with that said, let's jump right into the first topic of this video, which is the Oilers making big moves, and it's bound to happen here in Edmonton with their article from Pierre LeBrun and Johnston, both reputable, notable insiders in the NHL world, saying there are going to be some huge moves to be made. And that first one is the Oilers being linked to the Montreal Canadiens' David Savard. If you don't know David Savard, he's obviously that big right-hand shot defenseman that I think the Oilers may be lacking at this point in time. To see the direct quote here, this is what they had to say in their article from The Athletic. They said, obviously, his play has dipped a bit this season. He is up there now. He is 34 years old, but on the last year of his contract and could make this team even better. It says, right now, obviously, they said if you have him as a 6th, 7th D-man to help kill those penalties and has that Stanley Cup winning mentality, he has one in the past. Plus, he's right-handed shot, which is hard to come by. Kind of checks all the boxes right now for this Edmonton Oilers team that they kind of need a David Savard right now, in my opinion. If we just take a look at his stats, He's not a guy like an Evan Bouchard or, a Cale Makar who's going to go out and light up the stat sheet or anything, but he's going to do the dirty things that you need out of a defenseman every night to win games, such as block shots. I mean, last season he had over 150 block shots, and so far this season he's at over 80 block shots. He's also not afraid to lay the body. He is a bit of a physical defenseman as well, which is great to see out of David Savard. The big thing about Savard here that I know a lot of you guys are probably thinking is the age and the injury factor that plays into David Savard. In the past 3 seasons, I believe he had 62 games, and so far this season, he's on 32 games. So, he hasn't been able to get through a full 82-game season in a while, but I think that getting 60 games out of a David Savard is definitely better than getting nothing, or even just getting a full playoffs out of him would be better than not having him on your team. And if we just keep moving on here, his contract cap hit isn't that bad either. I mean, right now, he's at $3.5 million on the end of his career. He's a rental type of deal for this Edmonton Oilers team where, he's in the last year of his deal. You don't necessarily need to re-sign him, but he is a solid defensive defenseman on that right side that you need. Because if you look at your defensive pairings right now, the left side very strong with Kulak, Ekholm, and Darnell Nurse, but when it comes to that right side, it's where it gets a little bit weaker. I mean, you have Bouchard, who is a tremendous defenseman. Then you go down with Stetcher, and you got Emerson as well. I think having David Savard even mixed into this third pairing, or even playing that 7th role where he comes out maybe every second, third game, is definitely worth the risk to go out and get this guy, because it makes your team deeper on that defensive side, and it's a guy who has that Stanley Cup winning experience. He knows how he needs to play in the playoffs, and that is what this Edmonton Oilers team is missing. When you look at their forward core, the forward core is fun. They have 2 of the best players in the world in Draisaitl and McDavid. It's when you get to the behind the blue line is where this team starts to their play starts to dwindle. I won't say dwindle, but it's not as deep as their forward core is. So going out, getting a guy like David Savard is definitely a good risk, in my opinion, and it's not that big of a risk. It's like a medium risk, medium reward here, I would say. Like, it's, you might be risking it because of the age and the injury factor in the past, but if you can get him in the playoffs healthy, that's what you want. That's what you're trading for. That is what you're getting out of this guy. And if we just keep going here, at the deadline, they're looking like the Oilers just going to have around $3.5 million in cap. And if we seen the David Savard salary, it is 3.5 exactly. So you can bring this guy in. You don't need to, make any big salary adjustments here in this trade to bring a guy like this in. And you do have some picks to work with. Not much this season. I mean, you got a second and a third, but then the next draft year is where you have everything available. You can offer the Habs maybe a fourth for this guy, maybe, a third, maybe, I don't even know if he would get a third, but I definitely think he's worth a fourth here in this position. So if you're bringing him in on full salary, I think a fourth is definitely the market here. I could be way off with that, but in my opinion, that makes sense, if you know what I mean. Like, you're getting a good pick back in cap in return. Maybe the Montreal Canadiens, where they're a younger team, would rather have one of these prospects, mid to low range prospects that the Edmonton Oilers have. But it would be an interesting trade nonetheless, and one that I really do think should happen here. And moving on, we got John Gibson. Yes, I know you guys probably seen the thumbnail of this video and said, how are we going to get John Gibson, and how does he fit on this team? And I think Chris Johnston and Pierre LeBrun said this best. They say, obviously, there's no apparent thing that sticks out when you're thinking about the Oilers, which in regards of, improving, other than the goaltending situation, in my opinion. We've seen Stuart Skinner be great. We've also seen him be horrible. So, that's the risk judgment as well. I think this season, Skinner's having a solid year. I would have to say that. I wouldn't say he's the best goalie in the league, but he's definitely, a guy who I would rather have over some of these other goaltenders in the league. But the thing is, when it comes to that, are you willing to take that risk of going into the playoffs past deadline with Stuart Skinner and then him going down with injury and riding it out with Picard? Because I think, the way that the cookie crumbles here in Edmonton, if that was to happen, that would maybe be the end of it for Edmonton. I mean, they were right there last season. They almost won the Stanley Cup, but now, taking Skinner out of that situation with the injury, will completely derail their hopes this season. So going out, getting a guy like John Gibson we could definitely see that. I mean, if we just take a look at what they said here in this article about this trade, basically what they do say here in this little quote here, you can pause it, read the whole thing if you want. It basically reiterates what I just said about if Stuart Skinner goes down, who do they have to pick up the slack? I mean, this would be a trade to help out in that kind of situation, where they say obviously he would be acquired with a $3.2 million cap hit, which is easily available for the Edmonton Oilers to go out and get. They could get him in on 50% retained. You'd have to deal out a couple of big picks for that, in my opinion. But if Edmonton is all in on winning the cup this season, this would be a great upgrade to have going into the Stanley Cup playoffs, and a great number 2 to Stuart Skinner. I would even say he would be the number 1 in that scenario. I think John Gibson is a tremendous goalie and has been over his entire career in the NHL. It's just he's been on that Ducks team where they've either been good or in recent years they haven't been so good in that rebuild. So you get him on a team like Edmonton, who is popping right now, one of the best teams in the league. I think this guy could really soar and really outperform Stuart Skinner in some areas of the game. But if we just keep going on here, John Gibson, 12 games this year, 5 wins. He's putting up a .909 with about 2.93 GAA, which, is really good numbers for the team he's on. I mean, considering he's on maybe one of the lower teams in the league right now, still putting up numbers like this just proves how great of a goaltender he actually is. He is 31 years old, and 31 years old isn't that old for a goaltender, I wouldn't say. I mean, you're still getting maybe 3-4 more good years out of John Gibson here, and to go on there, his contract cap hit right now, like I said, is about $6.4 million. So you're going to have to make something work here to bring him in. You're going to have to get him in at 50% retained. That's the only option that the Edmonton Oilers do have to bring him in, and you might have to ship out a second-round pick for this and a prospect, or maybe even a role player type of guy to get John Gibson in. But I do think it is worth it in the scenario where, goaltending has always been an issue in Edmonton, and a lot of people have questioned Stuart Skinner, so bringing in a proven guy here in John Gibson could really give him a great look at the Stanley Cup aspirations as well, where I think that would just be the best scenario for a guy like John Gibson, is to get out of the current situation he's in, where he only has maybe 3-4 good years left of his career if he's lucky, to now go to Edmonton. He still has 2 years left on his deal. You're going to have him retained at half his salary, and you could really have a great shot at winning a Stanley Cup here. But if you had to ask me, if I was the GM of the Edmonton Oilers, what trade am I going out to make? I think I got to go with the David Savard one. You can call me a homer as a Montreal fan, but I do think that David Savard is a tremendous, tremendous defenseman. I think you can stick it out with Stuart Skinner. Just fingers crossed, toes crossed that he doesn't get injured, and David Savard would really help that right side, make them a lot deeper, it would just improve the penalty kill a lot more, and it would just be such a much smarter ad, in my opinion. But I want to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comment section. What do you think? Who are you going after? Are you going after Gibson? Or are you going after Savard? Let me know down below. Appreciate seeing all your guys' comments down there. And like I said earlier, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, we're on the road for 9,000 subscribers here on the channel. So if you're not subscribed already, you want to keep up on the latest NHL content, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you want to check out a video we did the other day, popping up on your screen right now. But as always, I've been your host, KC. Keep your stick on the ice.